Welcome to another segment of the BYU Management Society's Learn from Professionals initiative. Our goal is to provide guidance to young adults that are either exploring various careers or are ready to jumpstart their career. So today we have an opportunity to learn from a seasoned executive within the insurance industry with an emphasis in international relations, accounting, and compliance. Mr. David Rupper served a mission with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Taipei, Taiwan, and subsequently graduated from BYU with a double major in international relations and accounting. Later, while working full-time, he completed an evening MBA from Golden Gate University. David worked in various financial capacities with KPMG and Baxter Healthcare prior to joining MetLife. At MetLife, David's U.S. responsibilities included leading a team of 100 compliance professionals to coordinating the successful integration of compliance programs as part of MetLife's $16 billion acquisition of ALICO, which operated in 55 different countries. David's Asia responsibilities included serving as head of compliance for MetLife Asia, where he resided in Hong Kong and coordinated 225 MetLife compliance professionals in 10 Asian countries. During this assignment, David dealt with complex regulatory matters and integrated MetLife's compliance program into separate joint ventures in Malaysia and Vietnam. Subsequently, David relocated to Tokyo, where he led a company-wide compliance transformation for MetLife Japan, and this impacted 6,000 associates. Following his retirement from MetLife in 2019, David's focus turned to Africa. He currently serves as the BYU Pathway Career Economic Development Specialist for Africa, also as an advisor to the Lord's Hand, which is a non-governmental organization that provides laptops to Africa Pathway students. And finally, on the BYU Management Society's Africa Leadership Team. David and his wife, Leslie, live in Salt Lake City. Their 4 children are busy raising their family and their careers. So welcome, David. Thank you for your willingness to share your expert advice with our viewers.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here.
So David, what made you decide to pursue a career within the insurance industry?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, because insurance isn't probably top of mind for everybody to go into. But I had graduated, as you indicated, with my degrees, and had been working with Baxter Healthcare, and that was enjoyable. It was a U.S. corporation, and I had the opportunity to think about insurance as a way to help people improve in their lives. We know that people have different facets of their life, and certainly there's many temporal considerations that are important. In insurance, in savings mechanisms, and helping people think about retirement and protection. Those societies that have families who do that are stronger societies. And so it just seemed like a way to give back and help people.
That's nice. So within MetLife, you had a number of executive assignments. Can you tell us a little bit more about your career path and specifically thinking about our viewers? How would you counsel a young adult to grow and develop within their own career?
Well, thank you. And helping young adults develop is one of my passions. So this is a great subject. I think it's so important when you're young that you're always learning and exploring, and you start to identify opportunities. So you read voraciously, and you're always being and listening to people who are interesting, developing these relationships to grow. And so, specifically with MetLife, I left Baxter Healthcare and came to work for MetLife. And I thought it was going to be a pure financial planning position. They had a program for success development program for MBAs and attorneys. And then it wasn't long after I moved my family from one city in California to another city in California that I started to question some of the promises that were made to me. And so I say that because you're always going to have disappointment in life. You're always going to have where people don't seem to maybe be as honorable as they should have been. But how do you make lemonade out of that instead of just crying about it? And so I worked hard and did insurance sales for 4 years. And if you want a tough job, go out and try to sell insurance to people, right? It's not easy. It's much better to be in a position like Scott, where people come to you and say, "I need your help," right? That's a much better way to go. And we used to say people don't plan to fail, but they fail to plan. And so I think in your lives, take ownership for your career and map out as best you can, and then constantly be improving your roadmap for where you're going. And that if you spend dedicated time each week, and it's funny, right? We'll find time to watch our favorite TV programs or YouTube videos or whatever else. But if you'll spend time each week, even if it's just 30 minutes, where you have a chance to relax and think, well, what did I do this week to help my career? And what am I going to do next week to help my career? That by itself can change the trajectory of your career.
That's interesting. So one of the young adults that I coached, she got a great job with the company. And shortly thereafter, she called me almost in a panic. And she said, "Scott, I need to meet with you right away." And I said, "Okay, that's great." We worked in the same building. So she came down. I asked her, "What is the problem?" And she said, "Scott, they're asking me to do some responsibilities outside my job description." And I said, "Wow." So how would you respond to that, David?
I would first explore what's the additional ask they are requesting of you, and see, does it have some type of relationship to my current job? Is it usually management asks something like that because they need it. They need your help. And so it's like, and you don't want to say what's in it for me, but you want to understand it, how important it is to them, because maybe they're looking at this as career development. Maybe they're saying, you're doing X and we'd like to see how you can do with Y. And I've seen many people grow because they were willing to do Y and Z, but you have to be careful it doesn't become too much and it doesn't undermine what you're going to be measured on. And so you'd have to see your performance indicators and other things, but just don't say no. Carpenter's rule, measure twice and cut once. I would investigate it, but always use skills of diplomacy so that they see that you're a professional.
And that's interesting. My response to her was, "Well, did you tell them thank you?" And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, if you can do jobs outside of your job description, then they might be looking at you for management or a supervisor." So that's interesting. So David, has your career always been on a continual upward path, or have you had to overcome obstacles?
Well, this is a great layup question, right? Because very few people do we ever meet in life that their life just, it just gradually ascends. Yes, there's been obstacles. I remember one time I was on a 50-mile canoe trip with my son up in Canada without cell phone connection. And when I got back, I found out that something in one of my organizations had blown up very big time with a very significant government concern. And later in the performance management process, I was held responsible for that. Had I been there, maybe I would have had a chance to damage control better and to kind of manage the situation, but I had to bear the brunt of that. However, The good thing is, every year you start over in the performance management process. And so you just build new goals, new objectives, and far exceed those goals and objectives. And then people look at you differently. And so later on, I had other opportunities that were even better than what I had at that time. So it's like, never give up. And Abraham Lincoln has a great saying where he said, I always try to do my best, and someday my chance will come. Well, that happened in 1860 when he was elected president of the United States and held this country together in a very divisive political time. So, just grin and bear it, have grit, and it'll work out. So,
David, you have your undergraduate degree from BYU, you have an MBA, and you talked about taking a portion of your day or your week to continually learn. Can you talk about a little bit about a lifetime of learning? I mean, I know you're a very studious type person. Can you talk about certifications or advanced learning that would help somebody in the insurance industry?
Yes, and so I think the first thing is you want to be networking with people. You want to talk with people who are maybe a few levels above you within your industry, and find out, what did you do to grow and develop yourself? What would you do today? And then start to go, and then always be reading, and always be putting forth your best foot. And so people perceive that you create value and that you're somebody who's going to be a value creator. And then as you do that from day to day, week to week, that starts to become who you are. I mean, remember when you think back in school, when people went to school because they were forced to go to school, you want to be the person who's learning every day because you're investing in your career, you're investing in your life, you're investing in your capability to help mankind. And so, and it's interesting, if you read about the billionaires in the world today, all of them have this insatiable curiosity that they're always reading, they're always learning, they're always asking questions, because that's how they become better.
So, David, you mentioned that you would seek out the advice and mentoring of others within your industry or company that have been successful. It sounds very much like an informational interview. So how would you do that? How would you seek these individuals out and develop questions for them?
Well, if you're a part of the BYU Management Society and you participate in the Young Professional Career Engagement Program, they make that easy for you, because you sit down with a coach and you say, here's what I'm trying to do. And that talented, concerned coach is going to listen to you and start to give you advice. Now, it's up to you if you're going to follow that advice or not. If you don't have that, at least start to create, and you should do this anyway, create centers of influence around you, people who are interested in you. And I've heard it said that, people who have expressed interest to you in your life, to wherever you're at now, go back to them or find other people who want to help you grow. But also always remember, if you're trying to take something from people, always be thinking about, what can I give back to them? So it's a bi-directional relationship versus a one-way relationship, because those get old. And when busy people, they don't have time for that, but they want to help people that they feel a connection to, and that they believe are kind of following their advice, or are testing their advice.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. I love mentoring and reaching out to people within a company and asking them to help you establish a successful career. I think that's incredible. So, talking about careers, you've had a number of executive positions. You've been promoted. Your responsibilities have continued to develop and increase. Can you tell me a little bit about, what do you believe are the most successful characteristics of successful executives, no matter what the industry?
All right, well, thank you. Well, one thing about young people, as you move towards that, I would say this: if you're working for a company that's outlined their vision, their mission statement, their guiding principles, really take that to heart. and really apply that in your life. And in your performance review process, document that you're doing that. And demonstrate that in your conversations with leadership, because that's how they drive corporations, with vision, mission statements, guiding principles. So that's a very important thing. I think today, as you look at executives, well, they're very well read. I think the best executives know how to unleash talent and unleash potential. And I think the best executives are willing to share praise. They're willing to share credit. In fact, they want other people to realize that they made a major role in that. And so you've heard this philosophy of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. It's so fun. It's so exciting to work with people who have a growth mindset, which is more like, well, what if we did this, right? Versus we cannot do that, or would shame you in some kind of way. So I think, you find those people who just create energy, they create value, but they have a sense of morality about themselves. They have a sense of ethics. They have just a code of conduct that you look at and you say, that's a powerful person because of who they live their life.
Well, I know that when I'm looking for someone to help move ahead the Young Professional Career Engagement Program, I seek your advice and your skills and everything that you bring to the program. So, David, what do you believe are some of the most important trends that are impacting the insurance industry now?
Well, I would say in the insurance industry, certainly you have the whole concept of AI, artificial intelligence, and then robotics, and how do you streamline work processes? You think that in connection with data analytics and reporting and having access to data. In the old days, it used to be that people would make decisions, leaders might make decisions based on information, but it wasn't complete. And sometimes people would make decisions based on a certain assumption that they had where things are going. Today, it's so data-driven and really quality data. And I know in a compliance perspective, one time we sit down, this is like back in the 90s, right? So you think of, or maybe early 2000, early 2000, we had a data analytics firm came in and they said, based on your data, we found these certain troubling patterns in a few different areas. And they said, can you tell us what happened there? Well, because we had lived through those period of time where we had regulatory issues because of people not being compliant in their sales practices, we could say yes. And so from that, we knew what had taken place. From after that, we were to able to develop a model that would be more predictive in terms of, here are red flags, here are indicators that says this transaction manifests a greater degree of risk. So put additional controls around that. So certainly as it applies to a compliance and a governance perspective, but artificial intelligence, it streamlines everything. So that's a great area. Data analytics, very key. And certainly having soft skills. Sometimes people come in and they can be very good in their area of expertise, but they have a difficult time interacting in the next swim lane or the swim lane over. So having that big picture and taking that win-win, that you're going to help other people win because that's going to be a win for the company. That's important because you develop that reputation of the person who's able to get things done versus the person who's going to complain about, well, we couldn't do this because of X, Y, or Z.
I like that win-win attitude. And I think that sometimes individuals, when they're interviewing, they're thinking about what can a company do for me, but they should be thinking about what can I do for the company, because that's on the mind of the interviewer.
Sorry, go ahead.
So David, oftentimes we see individuals, they may graduate with a degree in business or other degrees, and they've been very successful in school, but they just can't settle on an occupation or a particular field that they're interested in. What advice would you give to them?
I think I would say to them, somewhere you have to say, I'm going to make a position, I'm going to make a statement, I'm going to make a commitment. And I will press forward with that at the same, and I will excel at that because that will create opportunity for me. But at the same time, you're doing this other learning, you're exploring, you're developing relationships, you're developing contacts. How many people started small businesses and eventually at some point in time walked away from their day job because their small business had grown so much? That would not have happened if they would just stayed in their day job and came home from work and just kind of vegetated, right? They were growth driven to do things. And so I think that's critical. And I think always be learning. I mean, today they make it so easy. All you have to do is set up like on Google or any of these services where you say, I want to follow this particular company. Every day you're going to get an email that tells you how that company was mentioned in the news. And you get a very broad spectrum of what's taking place. Pretty soon as you do that, especially if you're going to interview for a company, you go into the interview with some mid-level manager, depending on the position you're applying for. Well, you may know more about what's going on in the company that mid-level manager does because you're paying attention to the day-to-day, what public relations is putting out there for the investment community to be aware of.
So you're saying that research is important then?
It absolutely is. And it makes all the difference. That's where knowledge becomes vital because you can use it to your advantage. And another great thing is that, I like to say when I was at Harvard, I was there for 1 week for an executive program that my company spent a lot of money to send me there. And they brought in the best, Harvard Business School professors that spoke to us and everything. They had one person came in and she talked about strategy and the importance of strategy and knowing versus doing. And, it sounds simple, but, most people know what they need to do, but they really struggle on the doing side. And then I think we focus on knowing versus doing versus becoming. Keep working on who's the person you want to become, because as you engage in those activities, invariably the time will come that you will be that person because you've been doing all the right things all the way along. And so it pays off, but it's a lot of work. And if you haven't read the book Grit or watched Angela Duckworth and her TED Talk on grit, you have to do that because it's powerful. And there's many other books that you can read and TED Talks and other things to motivate yourself. You don't have to go crazy with this, but every day, just inspire yourself when you're working out or you're making your drive or something like this. Just inspire yourself and then kind of find out, what can I follow up on? What's one thing I can do that came from that? It'll make all the difference.
David, we understand how important balance in life is, but we also understand that companies are very demanding. They want results. So what advice can you give to young adults about being successful in your business, but also having balance within your life?
Yeah, that's great. I think the first thing I would say is if you can, pick your manager, right? Because some managers are going to be better than that and others. And so, but having said that, if you can find out what's most important to your manager, and if you say to your manager, look, there's 168 hours in the week, but it's how I use those hours that really makes a difference too, right? I can use 50 hours a week in a level 5 area of contribution, but if you give me the flexibility that I need, I can give an output on level 9 or 10. What would you rather have? 50 hours at 5, some type of contribution of 250, or would you rather have that at a contribution of 500? And help them so they can get on board with you. Always do what they need to do. Find out what their hotspots are, but make sure you have some latitude to do what you need to do so you have that balance, so you can participate in that family activity. But it's got to be win-win. And I know my greatest managers that I loved working with were those who would give me that autonomy to get the job done. It would be clear in the communication. Always be precise. And what do you really need? When do you need it? So you can overachieve that. And so ask questions. But it's really fun to work with somebody who trusts you but gives you very clear guidance.
David, earlier you talked about how entering into the insurance industry, you found that to be very meaningful because you were making a direct impact in people's lives. And a lot of young adults, that's what they want to do. They want to make a meaningful impact in people's lives. So when they're selecting a career, what advice would you give them about searching out and using their God-given talents to bless the lives of others?
Great question. Great question. Well, I think first off, when searching a career, I would be asking myself, is this career going to be here tomorrow? Right. And so I would look at, what are the threats that career is facing? Every career is evolving. And so, and that's where it's good to talk to people at entry level, mid-level, senior levels, kind of find out, what are the pressures they face? What's the competition that's out there? And once you understand the lay of the land there, then you start to look to say, okay, who are the leaders in that career? Because if you get with the top performing companies, you have better opportunities than the laggards. Once you're a laggard, unless you're a turnaround expert, you can come in and create a powerful team. It's very difficult to catch up. Right now, it might be for a period of time, get you some experience. You can jump to, a firm that's, middle in terms of its success, or maybe higher tier. But I think very carefully about the company I go to work for. But then as part of that, I would ask, what kind of culture do they have? And do they have this culture where it's truly meaningful of social responsibility and they give back? And you can see that in the fabric with people, right? Where they do take a day off to go out and build a home for, Habitats for Humanity, or they're going into the school and they're encouraging some type of self-development. They create opportunities for you. And it's never going to be perfect, but you can find those. They're out there. There are firms who want to make a difference. And so, and that's, I think, what's great about today's generation more than my generation. It seemed like we came out of school like, well, where's the money, right? Today, I think there's so much more focus on, okay, I want to provide for myself, but I want to feel good about what I do. So I think that's a wonderful mindset.
Sure. So taking your career hat off and putting your life coach hat on, what advice would you give to young adults about living a meaningful and productive life?
Great question. And this is probably more than we have time to talk about, right? But if they haven't watched Clayton Christensen's YouTube TED Talk video about living a life of significance, I would watch that. It's powerful. Okay. If they haven't Googled and watched the Harvard study and the longitudinal study on happiness, and you just can Google Harvard study on happiness. That's really important, because basically it says at age 65, if you're in a relationship of trust, you're going to live for the remaining years, you're going to live longer, you're going to live healthier, you're going to live happier. So that says that applies earlier and too, right? Create a relationship that's really going to, bring happiness to you. And I think then, find those things that you really enjoy doing. And for me, I enjoy helping people. And that's why I go to Africa, because you can see how it changes people's lives. But you don't have to go to Africa. You can go to this kid next door who needs help because, a single parent, and help there. But find out what motivates you and then do it. I mean, and keep a journal, keep track somehow what you're doing, so you can go back in life and look to say, did I make a difference last month, last quarter? And set goals and review those goals. Goals without reviewing them are almost worthless, right? So, make sure like every week or something, whatever your kind of period of accountability is with yourself, look at your goals and say, okay, what did I do? What do I need to do? And then do it.
Okay. I love that. Now, you're giving some advice to your children. You've got some adult children. There's a book that you showed me. Can you just show our audience your book and just give us 3 of the suggestions that you have in that book?
All right, so here's my book, and it just says, collection of life stories. And I wrote down here 10 tips for success, and so I'll just give you 3. And one of these I would say is this, that from Angela Duckworth, it says, as much as talent counts, effort counts twice. Right? So really put forth the effort. Another one I would say that is that This is another Angela Duckworth quote that I like. The main thing is that greatness is doable. Greatness in many, many individual feats, and each of them is doable. And so that's really powerful. That's why you do these things, because it will make a difference by doing it. And then one that I always like is there are dozens of rules for success, but none of them work unless you do.
That's terrific. David, in closing, is there any other career advice that you would that you'd like to offer to the young adults watching this?
Yeah, I would say, and now's a great time. It's still, it's middle of January. It's a great time as you plan your year. I would look at myself and say, okay, and you've probably done this as part of your career development cycle at work, but I would really look and say, what do I need to do to really take myself to the next level? And whatever that is, if it's going through and taking advantage of one of these, online courses from Coursera, Google, or one of those, LinkedIn, great courses there. If it's, forcing yourself to go out and to meet people, there's a guy, Jeff and Jamie Downs, who wrote a book called Streaking, where every day they have streaks that they maintain, they do every day. And one of Jeff's goals is every day is to meet a new person, right? What a great goal, right? And so, but I would really, identify those, and then during the week, somewhere do it. And don't get to the end of the week where you haven't done it, because then you have to say, okay, I got to go out and do that. But as you do that, pretty soon you're going to find it's easier to do. And you're going to look back 3 months later, and you're going to start to see things start to open up. Doors, opportunities come your way. You get introduced to people. You get asked to do things that you wouldn't have a chance otherwise. So be passionate, be positive, but be constructive as you plan.
David, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, out of your very busy schedule, to offer career building and life advice to those young adults, and in a number of areas. To wrap up this video, we'd like to remind our viewers that they can either reach out on their own to seasoned professionals to schedule, like we did, an informational interview with David, or you can ask for an introduction to a professional from someone that you know. To prepare for informational interviews, we recommend that you watch the video on our website, on the Young Professionals Career Engagement website, titled Conducting Informational Interviews. Again, thank you, David, and we appreciate all the advice that you've given today.
Thanks, Scott, and you're doing tremendous work, and it's a privilege to just in a small way help you out.
Thanks.